Well, I feel like my intro should have been like some little Spanish guitar music playing, and it'd been like, he's a 35-year deputy. He eats at a handful of restaurants and always gets the same entree. He's the world's most uninteresting man.
Well, now we can do that.
Yeah.
We just stick that at the beginning, dump the music in.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
See, this is what I'm talking
There it
about,
is.
people. This is what happens when we're
There it
planning
is.
safety tips.
Yeah. You're listening to 56, a Pinellas County Sheriff's Office podcast. I'm Ricky Butler with Laura Sullivan and Ashley Cooley. If you follow us on social media and even just pay a little bit of attention, our guest needs no introduction. It's Deputy Chuck Skipper with the Crime Prevention and Community Awareness Unit. Thanks for coming on, Chuck.
Sure.
We are looking forward to talking about all things Chuck and then, of course, crime prevention. But first, Ashley has the icebreaker question. This is the scariest part of the whole thing, so we're going to get it over with on the front end. Yes, it is.
It's fun. This is fun. All right. Karaoke night. You do not have a choice. You have to perform a solo. What song are you picking?
Because I'm not very original, I probably a Kenny Chesney or Toby Keith song.
Which one?
What's the one where it's the patriotic one?
Courtesy of the red, white, and blue.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Chuck could rip through that after a few drinks, probably.
I sing much better.
Yeah, don't we all?
I don't know. I'm stuck. You know, I'm just going to say the theme from HR Puff and Stuff or something. No, maybe like something Pink Floyd, maybe.
Wow.
Pink
I don't
Pony
know.
Club.
That'll sober everybody up real quick.
That one.
Pink Pony Club.
I'm going to do comic operetta. How about that, Ricky?
Yeah, okay.
Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yeah,
Pirates of
sounds good.
Penzance. All right.
Whatever that is.
It's not going to be Chuck Berry, My Ding-a-ling, or
Oh, I'm gonna do. What was that? The Discovery Channel song. Remember
Ooh.
that? You and me, baby. Ain't
Yeah,
nothing but
do it like
mammals.
they do it on the Discovery
Yeah.
Channel.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'll do that one.
Okay.
That's my final answer.
There you
Yeah,
go. That might get cut.
Yeah, I'm going to go country too, probably, and do like Neon Moon by Brooks and Dunn.
Ooh,
That's an easy one.
That is an easy one.
Yeah.
That's very nostalgic.
Yeah.
I would do Doing Time by Sublime. Lana Del Rey does a cover of it. That's right in my register.
Yeah.
Bam.
Oh, that's-
you have a
that's a
register?
good one.
Well, I suppose we all do.
What?
what-
Well, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Like, I'm not a singer or anything. I just know it needs to be lower for me.
Yeah.
So
All right. Okay.
That's
that
what
one,
I do.
I'll give that one wasn't too
that's
bad.
more fun.
That wasn't
It
too
is.
bad.
You know?
Some of it gets real deep.
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Not this time.
All right, Chuck. Grew up in North Florida-ish,
north of here.
north of here. Tell us about that.
Rural Florida.
Rural.
Rural, country. I grew up on a farm in Sumter County, which growing up there was nothing there, but it's now famous for the villages. So
Like as soon as you left, the villages came.
pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty
Wow.
much.
They
He's
took
gone.
to fill that void.
Yeah.
Party
It's
time.
lots
Yeah.
of farmland, and it was great for development, and so
There it is.
the villagers are there.
The villagers, the village people. So what kind of farm? What you guys grow or raise or?
Well, when you farm, you have to be very diverse to survive. So we raised beef cattle, and my dad did farming. We grew primarily cantaloupes, and he worked doing mechanicking and went to auctions and bought stuff and fixed it up, resold it. My mom had a government job working for the county. So
Sumter County.
Sumter County.
So you worked, I mean, all the way growing up, you're working on a farm, like that's it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah. 4-H, FFA. Little known fact, 1986 livestock judging, we were the state champions.
Best cow
Wow.
or what?
Well, we go down to Tampa State Fair and we would judge cattle, and there's different, steers and heifers and all that, and you would place them 1 through 4, and so it's a whole. When you grow up in a rural community, this is like
It's the normal thing.
this is what you do instead of sports.
So even though
But we won the state championship in '86, and then we went to Louisville and did horribly.
Louisville, you said that right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So despite the fact that we're, within an hour and a half of Sumter County, cow shows and animal shows always kind of blow my mind. So what is a good cow? Can you do anything to make a cow better, or does it come down to just the bloodline of cows?
You're just judging.
No, I know, but
you're
like
not coaching them.
Right, but but the people that are
Is there good
growing
grass
these
to
cows?
feed them?
Like, how do you affect the muscular structure of a cow? Like,
You can't. It is.
okay, so
it is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay, so all right, so
No
it's-
cows on treadmills or
right? None of that. The Rocky theme
We're not,
playing.
we're not coaching them. We're not doing
Okay.
anything. So
not juicing.
what they do is they put them in, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and it's pigs. It could be heifers. It could be steers. It could be whatever. And you place them in order from best to worst. There's usually a master judge that is University of Florida would usually go in, and you're trying to, they're the professionals.
Okay, so 1986 Florida cow champion Chuck Skipper
Yeah, well, I was on the team.
on the team.
So
On the team. Okay.
yeah.
So when you were like raising your own animals, like in 4-H, from little babies up to the
Yeah,
prize winning,
I shoot hogs in the county fair.
do you get attached to them? Is it hard to, because they're raised?
Yeah,
for a purpose that you
it's probably why I have arguments with Jessica now, because I have a separation between people and animals, and because you would raise this animal, you would care for it, you would groom it, you would work with it, and then you would take it to the show and use your showmanship skills and things like that, and then you would sell it, and it's going to get sold and butchered and
Eaten, yeah.
and you'll get the money for it, and that's how I bought my first truck. But it's like as far as give it a name and like you care for it, but that it's not going to be a pet forever.
Yeah.
Right. We had a pig named Pork Chop.
No.
Did it become a pork chop?
Yeah, and we didn't tell my mom till after she ate him. Yeah.
That's like out of Greek mythology. That's
Yeah, it was.
wow.
It was a traumatic thing for her.
Wow.
So it was just a pet pig that you named?
Yeah, kind of stumbled upon this pig, and then we had it in the backyard, which we weren't supposed to, and then but it started to it was raised with dogs, so it started to act like a dog, and all of a sudden they got too big, so we had to send him to the farm up north, and then he came back in white packages. Anyway,
Wait, that's not what happens when you say that you sent a dog to the farm, right? A nice farm in the country.
some cultures eat dogs, yeah, but no. Anyway,
So you grew up on a farm. Did daylight savings do anything for you?
oh yeah, this is controversial.
Because that's
yes.
that's what they say is that's why it was helpful for people that lived on farms and the kids that worked on them.
Yeah, I guess it may have, because in the summertime is when we were growing cantaloupes, and so we would pick the crops later in the day when it was cooler, and because of daylight savings time, we might not finish up till 8 o'clock or so. I guess it gave us a little more time. I don't know. It was.
I don't like that answer, Chuck.
No,
I
it's
want them to end it.
You know what? I'm
Change your
totally
answer.
fine with.
Yeah, I mean we have flashlights.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we farmers can adapt. I'm sure they're.
Well, that's what you guys do.
Yeah, exactly. So
So we talked about how to judge a good cow. How do you judge a good melon?
like a cantaloupe.
Yeah.
My personal thing is you want like a real heavy netting on a cantaloupe.
So like the cantaloupe has like the pattern on it.
Yeah,
that's
So,
the netting.
so when you say heavy netting, does that mean like
Like
Really
Really
pronounced.
coarse?
like more pronounced.
Okay.
Because typically as the cantaloupe vine gets older and
Mm-hmm.
the cantaloupes, like third, fourth, fifth, sixth generation that vine is producing, the netting gets a little bit thinner.
Oh,
So,
okay. So the first cantaloupes are the sweetest.
Yeah,
The-
yeah.
the
The
youngest
vine's the
okay.
strongest. They're the first cantaloupes. They tend to have that heavier netting, and then as they go on, they get a little bit lighter. So,
at what point do you leave the farm and what's next? So because you end up as a deputy in the jail of Marion County.
correct.
So how'd you get there?
Well, I did not want to be a farmer. It's a lot of work, long hours, doesn't pay that well, and so I like cars, and so I wanted to be a car salesman. I thought that would be fun, and so I worked my way into sales, and it was long hours. There was probably I think it was a retired Baltimore cop that I was a salesman with, and he was telling me, you don't make this a career. You need to find something with some benefits, something with some retirement. Anybody can sell cars. You can retire and come back and sell cars. And so I was working weekends and long hours and all that. And I was like, I was making pretty good money, but I didn't have any time to spend it. Then I just started asking around, looking around, and there was actually a federal prison about to be built in Sumter County. And I thought, well, maybe it would help if I got certified in corrections. There was a state prison nearby. So I didn't know a lot about it, but I went to the VOTEC school, got certified in corrections, and one of the instructors was a major from Marion County, Major Pauls. And great teacher, had great classroom presence and everything, and was a great salesperson for the Marion County Sheriff's Office. And so I looked into it, and the pay was much better than Sumter County. And I had a cousin that lived up there, so I talked to him about, hey, he was like a year younger than me. I'm like, we should become roommates, and if I get a job up there, and I did. And so we were roommates and started at the Marion County Sheriff's Office in 1990.
How was that?
It was good. It was good. It was eye-opening. A lot of great people. Fairly new jail. It had been probably built in the last 5 or 6 years, and met a lot of interesting people doing that in the jail.
You do?
Yeah, I worked in an A pod, which was kind of like a there's a high security component down there. There's juveniles and people in medical and kind of like people that are just kind of misfits that down there. People in solitary confinement, that kind of stuff. But there was one area we had a high-risk people, and ultimately we had the serial killer from Gainesville, Danny Rawlings.
Oh, wow.
Was in there. And so in that particular cell, there was I think 8 cells up and 8 cells down, and they would rotate. They'd come out 30 minutes a time, and they could shower, go up, sit close to the TV, do whatever, and then they'd go back in. And so, for months and months he was in there, and I talked to him a little bit. You don't get overly chatty with these people.
Sure.
But, it was, at first we were kind of like, this guy was they think this guy was a serial killer.
Right.
Because talk about some of the crimes he did. He would break into people's houses while they were sleeping, right? And
yeah, it was terrifying.
them
It was terrifying. I had a good friend that was going to the University of Florida as a student, and everyone was freaking out up there. And there was a lot of theories that this person was maybe pre-med because someone had been just cut completely down, and there was a decapitation, and the way it was done, and they thought maybe this is some kind of pre-med student, gone rogue or something, or maybe there's a couple people doing this because I think 2 of the cases there were roommates. It was 2 females, and it was another time it was a male and a female. And so it was how can one person, overpower 2 people? So yeah, it was. There was all these theories and everything, and then Danny Rawlings had committed a burglary, or no, a robbery, I think, of a grocery store, of all things, and Marion County was in custody, and their tips led them to believe he was the person, and actually he had a bad tooth, and so I went down and watched over him as the dentist pulled his tooth, and I remember supervision being bag that tooth. I want you to do a report, documenting that tooth and everything, because they saved it as evidence. And I guess later they used that for DNA and some other stuff to verify that he was, which he ultimately confessed to everything. He told them how he did it. And, I think he died in 2006 from the electric chair. But yeah, it was,
personality-wise.
Yeah, he was an odd guy. He was real tall, 6'3", kind of lanky, but kind of quiet, just kind of odd. But, just seeing him, you wouldn't think he was violent. He wasn't covered in tattoos, and he wasn't real tough acting or, violent acting. He was just kind of quiet and kind of odd, but kind of quirky. But yeah.
Was he well behaved? Did he cause trouble?
Yeah, we never had to fight him or do anything. He was fine.
Yeah.
And obviously you guys had him until the conviction, and then he went to
Stark or somewhere. Yeah, and I mean, he was years later after I left. He was put to death. But yeah.
Any other notable things at the jail there?
I had Eileen Warnos. She came in. She
got all the serial killers.
Well,
how'd you get so lucky?
One of them was in Marion County, and she came in there for some kind of pretrial. She wasn't there very long, but she came in and signed some property, and her reputation kind of preceded her. But so she was there briefly. I got to be with her face to face.
What was she like? Did you get to talk?
Which one was she?
She killed. I think she was working as a sex worker.
Okay.
And she killed her clients, 6 or 7 of her
damn.
male clients.
Allegedly. Now, some people said that people just picked her up as a hitchhiker and then she killed them. But
okay, I remember that one.
But yeah, she's one of the rare female serial killers.
Yeah.
Equality,
Yeah.
So you go to the road in Marion County eventually.
Yeah, a bunch of us, we got dual certified. We shared rides. We went over to the VOTEC over in Inverness. And I rode with deputies when I was in the jail. So it was, that was fun, and decided that, this is something I'd like to pursue.
Now, was that riding with deputies, was that just something you were able to do, or that was something you were doing intentionally to kind of get kind of exposure?
Yeah.
Both. Because I'd kind of done the jail thing for a few years, and it was fun, but it was like, okay, this is pretty much what the job entails. There's not a lot of different dynamics to
You
it.
didn't start detention for like age reasons?
No.
'Cause you can be younger and start as a detention deputy as opposed to being on the road.
Yeah, I heard it was easier to get a job working detention, and I wasn't even sure if I wanted to be a road deputy, getting into law enforcement and everything. So I was, content just going to school. Again, like I said, there was some other options of a prison being built, some other things. I didn't know I was even going to work for the sheriff's office. But working with the jail, then, I had the opportunity to meet deputies, and it was like, hey, I'd like to ride, and they work 12-hour shifts.
Come on,
They're like, yeah, absolutely. So, I'm tagging along, for 6, 8, sometimes 12 hours.
They must have liked that because that was another rural county. So, like if they're out there, there's not a lot of backup's 15, 20 minutes away. So they probably
a
like
lot
having
different.
somebody who,
Yes, it's much different than
and
wasn't a road deputy, but still,
a body, right?
yeah,
Rather
and
than
knew how to handle situations.
So just going back to the detention thing really quick. So when we had, when Sergeant Killian was in here, back when he started in Citrus, the idea kind of was, and it wasn't like a set in stone thing, but, back then were you finding like for patrol deputies, were a lot of them starting in the jail? And then was there any formality to that, or people just started at the jail and then decided they wanted to move on, or what was the sense back then about that?
Yeah, there were. I feel like there was a lot of us, like all of, there was like a group of us. We carpooled, and we all got dual certified, and we all eventually went to the road.
Eventually, yeah.
But
it wasn't like a required stepping
It
stone.
wasn't required, but there was a lot of people who did that, and honestly, I think it was great. I was like 22. I'd work with the public, but when you work in the jail, you're working with completely different demographics. You're working with people of all different socioeconomic backgrounds, cultures, people that maybe English is not their first language.
Learn how to talk to people.
You name it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And for the most part, if you treat people with respect, they'll treat you with respect. And learning some of those skill sets, learning how to interact, and because when you work in a jail, it's not just getting along with them. You need to have people do things. We don't have an outside crew that comes in and cleans the showers like you guys do. You need to pick up after yourselves. You need to, and so you have to, motivate people and encourage them to, and we had like standing head counts. So you had to get up, get dressed, have your name tag on, stand at your bunk, and, if you didn't, you got locked in your door, for the day. You're working with people, and it's a give and take. They don't want to be there. We can both make the best of a bad situation. Yeah. So taking that skill set and then going to the road, and you're working with people who are maybe intoxicated, or they're going through an emotional crisis and things like that. We have a ton of stuff on our belts now that you don't have in the jail. But the biggest thing you got going for you is what's between your ears, and just knowing how to communicate and talk to people. It's a great skill set. And if you do that correctly, most of the time you'll never need to touch anything on your belt.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so the road, what was that like?
So the road up there, it's a big county. Marion County is almost as big as Polk County. I think it's the 5th largest county in the state. And so you got the Ocala National Forest all the way over to Rainbow River, up to almost Gainesville. And so it's a big county. It's real spread out. And so you're working very large areas. And, for the most part, I mean, it's, typical calls. But if you need a backup, your backup could be 10, 15 minutes away. And 10, 15 minutes doesn't sound that bad, but when you need backup, and you're dealing with an angry, intoxicated person, or you're about to get into a fight, or if you were in a fight, it's pretty much going to be over
before anybody
in
gets
10
there.
minutes. Yeah.
So, and what year is this about, probably when you start?
So this is like 90, probably end of 93.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many deputies are on at any given time on the road up there? I mean,
I can't remember. I can't remember. I mean, there was the city of Ocala, and then everything else was county.
Sure.
And so, there was more deputies closer, just on the outskirts of town. But then the further out you had sectors that were much bigger.
Yeah.
But I mean, there wasn't a ton of us. I mean, I think people even now are surprised when I talk to the public how few deputies there are. They, I start talking about, North Pinellas. I'm like, we've only got like 6 deputies that are taking calls up here.
Right.
And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, like, I mean, we got a supervisor, we got a corporal, but, like we've got 2-3 deputies along US 19, and I mean, that's about it.
Right.
And, and they have to do A19 too, like
right.
It's, so people just don't realize I think there's more of us than there are.
Right. So, Green Chuck, first time road deputy up there. Any great stories, fights, anything good like that?
So my first, I don't remember like my first traffic stop. I don't remember maybe milestone things, but the first thing, and I've never forgotten it, was I got called to a domestic. But the domestic was over. So it was like a female called. There's been a domestic, it was kind of vague, just a domestic argument. And the other half has left, and the girlfriend just wants some information. So I'm like, oh, so they don't send any backup. They just send me. It's daytime, so like 2 in the afternoon.
Yeah, nothing happens back during the day.
Yeah, right. And she's just wanting some information. She's the other half is gone. So I drive down again. It's a rural area, and you pull off the main road, and there's like a dirt lime rock road, and you drive a little ways, and there's like a row of trees that is grown up in a fence line. And there's a flashing light, which is unusual to see out in the middle of a cow pasture, a flashing light. But it says 5 miles per hour. I'm like, that's kind of weird. So you drive through this line of trees, and on the other side is more pasture, but it's all chain link fences. And I think they're ostriches, emus, maybe both. I don't know. But there's these massive birds.
Oh, they freak me out.
And
they watch any like dinosaurs as you drive by.
Out.
Yeah, it's like Jurassic Park a little bit. It's like where they raise them or something. So there's like these 10-foot high chain link fences, and you're driving real slow, and they're like cocking their heads and necks and looking at you and everything, and you're driving real slow and just kind of taking it in, and you go through pin after pin after pin of these things, and finally up on the top of the hill, there's like a barn, there's like a single wide trailer, and so I pull up there and get out and go over to the trailer, and that's where the female is. And she explains that her boyfriend, they had an argument, and, she's got some marks on her, and like it got a little violent. I mean, nothing, but, there was some stuff moved around the house, and he was intoxicated. And so this has happened before, and she just wants some information, like, what can I do? And, that type of thing. So doing that, and then all of a sudden I hear this diesel truck pull up. And the drunk boyfriend's back, and so
you're surrounded by big chickens.
Yeah.
At 2 p.m.
Yeah, so he gets out, and I mean, he's certainly not intimidated by law enforcement because I've got a marked police car there, and he could have just easily turned around and like, now's not a good time to come home.
Right?
But no, he's like, he comes in, and he's a tall guy. He's probably like in his, I don't know, mid 40s. Here I am, so I'm like,
Green little youngster.
Yeah, I'm like 24 years old, and this guy, he's like probably 20 years older than me.
Excuse me, sir.
And he's
Can't do this.
Exactly. And he's probably got even like 2 inches on me. He's a big guy, and he's been drinking, and he's like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, your girlfriend called me. Well, you can leave." And I'm like, "Well, no." And so, I'm trying to like, rationalize with him like why I can't leave. I go ahead and call for backup, like, okay, now we got a situation, and knowing what all happened, like, this guy's going to jail. Yeah. So, but he's trying to like tell me, you can leave now, get out. He's getting all bossy and authoritative and everything, and it just kind of starts escalating there in the living room. I probably now would have been a little more patient and just kind of, I don't know, change the topic, kind of talk to him, but I was more business, being a new guy. And so I was like,
know who I am?
And I'm like, well, like, I'm not leaving.
You see this star boy?
Well, it wasn't that. It was more like, the reason I'm not leaving is you're going to jail. I'm not going to jail. And so.
Yes, you are. No, you're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not.
So anyhow, I grabbed his arm. I got one handcuff on, and we're like, it's not really like a fight so much, just more like a little wrestling match, around
things
this.
Are getting moved around in the house.
And the girlfriend's like screaming, like, oh, like, I don't want to go to jail. And, like, in my mind, like, this is where she comes out with a knife and stabs me, or something, because, now I'm taking the drunk boyfriend to jail. So I'm back on the radio, like, yeah, I need backup, quick, so they can, tell them my voice and everything. So, we end up going out the front door. There's a wooden porch out there, and we go out there, and he's like face down. He's got like his hands tucked underneath him, and I'm a little winded, and I'm kind of like watching over my shoulder, watching her, making sure she doesn't do anything screwy. So I hear a siren coming. So okay, my backup's coming. Well, again, this road says 5 miles per hour.
Yeah, they're not doing 5 miles an hour.
No, and these ostriches have never seen anything move this fast before in their life. So he's probably doing at least 60, and it's on this Lime Rock Road. Yeah, it looks like a rocket. You can see like the front half of the car, and then after it is just white plumes of smoke that go up about 50 feet in the air. And he lights and sirens, so it's loud, it's fast, and these ostriches freak out. I mean, they're like running into each other. They're bouncing off the pins. They are freaking out. They've never heard anything so loud, so fast. I mean, they do not know what's going on. And so he comes up there and hits the brakes and like slides like 30 feet and jumps out. This guy was like a former tank commander in the Iraq War. And so he comes running across, and I'm sitting there with my mouth open, like,
what is happening?
Did I cause this? Like, I mean, it's, I all of a sudden I'm like, I don't have a problem now.
Yeah.
I got it.
I'm terrified.
I'll figure it out. But like, what is going on here? And so he like comes in, like jumps on this guy and like puts his arms underneath him, and we pull his arms back and handcuff him, and he goes to jail. But yeah, it was definitely a memorable experience, seeing all those ostriches and everything just go berserk.
That's just all that happened. They just kept running into each other. Did they escape or anything?
No, none of them escaped. They were in these pens and everything, but they were.
A few of them probably had heart attacks after that.
I
don't know how much.
Yeah. Did it occur to you when you were
take.
driving through that it was 5 miles per hour because of them?
Yes.
Yeah?
It was totally because of that.
Well, you grew up on a farm.
Well,
I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, no one has.
Screw that.
No one has blinking mile per hour signs, in their driveways.
That's a clue.
Yeah.
But and then when you go through, you realize these birds are very sensitive to movement and everything. But then when a siren and a police car at 60 miles an hour with a plume of smoke comes in, it just blew their minds.
Yeah.
It kind of blew mine too. So.
I think Killian told a similar story. Being in a fight, then driving across it's just the way of life out there.
Mm-hmm.
You can just see it too.
Yeah,
like
absolutely. It was a great picture you painted. In fact, I think that's probably the intro where we talk about the plume of smoke and all these ostriches because there's no context and it's hilarious. Wow, that's a good one, but common out there, I guess. Backup. So
I mean, there's not that many ostrich farms, but I mean, there's just
a lot
of horse farms.
Do people eat ostrich? Like, why do you have an ostrich farm? Is it for those drive-through excursions?
The drumsticks are huge. Yeah. It's like the Flintstones.
And I think like the ostrich leather and stuff like that. They would make boots and things like that.
Okay.
So
People do eat ostrich.
Those things scare the hell out of me.
I know.
I'm legitimately terrified of them.
I have been on one of those safari
drive-through things, yeah.
And it was ostrich, emu, I don't know, but
terrifying.
I was like, you get no food, get away.
Yeah.
I don't like you. They freak me out. But I'm scared of like pigeons.
Yeah, you don't like birds in general.
Birds
so
freak
when
me
you
out.
make it
in
10
general.
feet
They
tall.
Well, it's a giant bird.
Yeah,
It's a
it
big
is a
chicken.
giant bird.
Yeah.
So with back up that far away, was there ever a time when you would pull up to an active scene, somebody fighting, and just knock it out because it was just too dangerous for you to be alone?
Well, you have to be more purposeful on what you're doing. So another big area we had was the Ocala National Forest, and most of that's federal land, but there's like little pockets of houses and that are in there, and there's like a little crossroads out there in the middle of the woods, that's got like a little Piggly Wiggly, a food line or something, and like 2 bars, because there's nothing much else out there to do. And so occasionally, these guys would, be drinking, and an argument would start, and there might be, someone would call 911, and the first step to get there, it's just not safe. You got like 6 or 8 guys maybe on motorcycles that are passing through from Daytona, and they just happen to stop there, and now there's some good old boys, and, you know, they're having an argument over, I don't know, football or something, I don't know. And things get dicey, and, you know, no one steps down, and, you know, this is my neck of the woods, and I don't care if you're a Harley Davidson guy or not, or whatever. And so, you know, there'd be like some big brawl or something going on. It's like the whole parking lot is like, looks like they're involved in it.
Yeah.
And
what does one deputy do against that?
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, like
30 people with
you call
glass
it in,
bottles.
and, you call it in, you see if you can, you know, but you
just watch and start taking bets on.
You wait for a few minutes, you know, until
You sit there
and you know, and then when the cavalry comes in, you know, I mean, you're going down, you know, State Road 40 and everything, you know, 100 plus miles an hour, because it's usually like 2 a.m. or something, you know. But you know, when everybody gets there, you know, I mean, there's like, you know, 6 or 8 people arrive within a few minutes, and, you know, they need to come in, like circle in on the parking lot or whatever. But you know, once the sirens start, you know, they kind of start breaking up on their own and everything. But you know, we go in, but
they don't break up when one car comes, because they know
it's
going to be a while before they have to stop.
Yeah,
fighting.
I mean, if it's maybe just verbal, you know, a deputy can, but
just get on the PA. Stop it. Stop fighting.
You're right. Yeah.
Stop.
Please.
Please. Something you mentioned, Chuck, earlier when you're talking about the domestic, you know, you basically said something like, well, you know, with more thought, or I would have now, like with what seasoned Chuck knows. Talk about that a little bit, because, you know, it tends to happen. You start your career, it's like, hey, I've got the badge on, I'm going to go take care of business. But it's like, yeah, you know, you need to be a little more thoughtful about it. You know, I mean, it's Stan, when we do talk about Citizens Academy and talk about use of force, we say, hey, he kind of gives this example where it's like, hey, you know, if I go and I got a warrant for somebody and I look at the totality of circumstances and he says, I'm not coming with you, I say, okay, and then I leave, and then calls for some backup. But, you know, other folks, you know, depending on where you are, I mean, if you don't know anybody, you're just going to jump in there and try to fight with them. Like, talk about how that evolves over time.
Yeah, well, you know, you get a sense of better judging the situation as to, you know, how important it is. I mean, there's times when you can't wait. You have to go in.
Absolutely.
You know, guns drawn, that type of thing. You know, you don't have that ability. But other things where, like I said, you know, like making that arrest, that is something that, you know, I wasn't going to leave, but, you know, it could have been handled a little different, maybe defer the conversation, ask about the birds, you know, that type of thing. And, you know, just stall him a few minutes. And then when another deputy gets there, you know, there's like, hey, this is what's going to happen, you know, that type of thing, you know. But, I mean, he was intoxicated. He was already kind of argumentative and everything. And so, you know, it was, but, yeah, you try to gauge the situation. You know, you sometimes have a traffic stop and you realize the person has a warrant. There's no need to tell them they have a warrant at that time. You know, call for backup, you know, just apologize for the computers running slow or whatever, you know, that type of thing. And just, you know, just wait, be more calculated, be smarter, work smarter, not harder.
Right.
Yeah. And because I would imagine in some cases it's more than just keeping yourself safe. Like, you could be keeping people around safe in case they decide to run or get really like insane.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely, because you know, the things that we do in trying to apprehend people, it to your point, it doesn't just affect us.
Yeah.
You know? And so whether it's, you know, and just like, you know, our pursuit policy and everything, you know, we don't pursue everything that we legally could pursue just because you have to weigh what are the safety and the dangers to the public. And, you know, someone who you're trying to stop for an expired tag, but they don't want to stop, it's like, well, obviously there's a reason. It's probably not the expired tag, but you don't know what it is.
Right.
So instead of being like, well, let's find out, let's chase this guy. And then, you know, he ends up T-boning, you know, some mom of, you know, with 2 kids in the car.
Right.
To find out, oh, well, I thought I had a warrant, but you don't, you know, and that's why he ran. Or, you know,
Right.
my license is suspended. And it's like, you know, like, was it worth, you know, a 2-year-old getting hurt and a mother or something?
Right.
So,
yeah.
Thinking of that with here, I believe anyways, that a lot of that has to do with how densely populated Pinellas is, that we don't pursue a lot. So that way we're not endangering the loads of people that are anywhere at any given time here. But when you were in Marion, did it look different since it was more of a rural area? Did you guys have more pursuits and
Yeah, and
things of that
it was a
nature?
different day and time. And listen, the state of Florida was a different state, back in the
Yeah.
90s. But yeah, we had pursuits that ran into other counties, and we would pursue people to Lake County and
Run it
Alachua
till the
County.
tires fall off.
It was a little more, I guess, the traditional, cops and robbers, chases and things like that. But again, this was 30 years ago.
Right.
Yeah.
So what brings you to Pinellas?
So while I worked at the sheriff's office, I met my girlfriend. We got engaged and then ultimately married. And we were married for about a year when she got an opportunity with her job to come to the Tampa Bay area. So I had about 4.5 years on with Marion County Sheriff's Office, and I was like, well, as a couple, we decided like this was the best move for us. Wasn't necessarily the best move for me, but at that time. But I was like, I'm still young in my career. But I came to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, and I was highly recommended to come here. There was another deputy I worked with whose brother worked in forensics.
Okay.
And so I came down, and he gave me a whole tour of the sheriff's office. And I have to say it was somewhat underwhelming because we had the old SAB.
Oh,
And
yeah.
again, I came from the sheriff's office in Marion County, and
Everything was new there, right?
everything, was like maybe certainly less than 10 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And I came here to the old county hospital that had been turned into the sheriff's administration building that was built in the 40s.
And haunted.
And we were out at forensics, and even back then those buildings were unimpressive. There was a brand new courthouse being built, but he was telling me how great the agency was, the training and just everything. And we had the white shirts back then, and he's like, I work here, and there's no other agency you really want to work for. You want to come apply for the sheriff's office.
And you didn't consider any other agencies, really? You just,
So I didn't. I really didn't. I applied and came down and was like, I need to get a job quick. My wife's living out of a hotel. And so they're like, well, it's kind of hard to get on the road, but I see you're dual certified, but we could start you right away in the jail. And so I was like, okay, I need a job, and done that before, and I really didn't know the county. I didn't know anything down here. I'd been to Clearwater Beach, I think, one time. So I was like, maybe this is for the best. So I started back in the jail.
Still a pretty stark contrast to Marion County.
Yeah, it was quite different. Like I said, it's an older jail. There's different designs. It's funny how every decade there's a different
Right.
design, and
different
Pinellas County had them all. They had
Yeah.
we had a 5-story building. We had G wings, which were 2-story. We had they were all a little different.
It's called eclectic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
That
very
sounds better.
Sounds much better, yeah.
Yes.
Good job PRing on that one, Ashley.
So and I left before all the new construction out there, and now things are way more modern and more uniform.
So how long were you in the jail?
So I was in a jail, did 3.5 years.
Okay.
And
That's a long time.
Yeah, it is.
Well, I was happy to get out of there that quick because
wow.
I could have swore that I was told that after a year I could apply for the road. But then when I was going through the oral board, they're like, so how do you feel about coming back to working in the jail after being a road deputy? And so I explained the situation and moving down here and everything. And, I was fine with it. I said, after a year, it's probably the wrong answer I gave. I was like, after a year, I am going to, most likely apply for the road. And everyone at the oral board's like looking around like, it's a 2-year commitment. And I'm like, oh, well, my mistake.
Clearly, I don't.
Yeah, apparently not.
I was misinformed or I misunderstood something. But so after 2 years, I will likely, honest to a fault. I was like, I didn't really want to make a career in the jail, but find the work there and do that. But yeah, so I got out a little after 3.5 and came to the road.
And then, what'd you get into? What was your thing?
It was a lot to, even though I'd done this before, it's a lot different.
Different environment.
And yeah, much different, much more congested, but you're back up
It's right there.
yeah, there's deputies, showing up. You don't even have to ask for them; they show up.
Where were you assigned at first?
Kind of bounced all over, but I remember I did I I think I had day shift. Luckily, I got day shift for like 8 months or something, and then shift change. But I was like a year in midnights on in Safety Harbor.
Okay.
We had 3 shifts then. We had day, evening.
Yeah,
minutes,
yeah.
right?
We worked 8s, so we worked day shift, evenings, and then midnights. And I was midnights in Safety Harbor for a year, and I think I got back on day shift and had an interest in doing traffic. Actually, got onto the MATE team, which is our Major Accident Investigation team, essentially traffic homicide. And so I got on there, and there was all the guys that were in traffic at the time, all 3 of them. They were in MATE, and so it was a good way to kind of network with them, and like, hey, I'd like to do your job one day. It looks fun and different.
We'll talk about what MATE is first, but I'm also interested in what the training is involved, because that's kind of intense. But what is MATE for? What counts as a major accident?
So a little bit unique in this county. So typically traffic homicides, traffic crashes that result in a death, they're worked by the Florida Highway Patrol in unincorporated county. But Marion County or Pinellas County is unique in that we have 13 contract cities. So we are essentially a city police for those cities like Seminole, Dunedin, Safety Harbor, Oldsmar. And so if a traffic fatality happens in those cities, FHP does not investigate.
Okay.
And so we do. And we do a very thorough investigation, and it's a team approach. This is something you do above and beyond your day.
It's like a call out.
Yeah. So
happens,
you're a day shift deputy or midnight deputy or whatever, but then you're also, in addition, on the MATE team.
Like SWAT, but nerdier.
Yeah, not near as glamorous.
and used more often, probably.
So,
Damn.
so
What?
you get called out, and so it could be a traffic fatality or a crash that's serious enough that death is likely to occur. So someone who's maybe bay flighted, and it's like they may or may not make it, that type of thing. So they would call out the MATE team.
What was your interest in being on the MATE team?
Well, it was just something different. It was, I don't know why, it's just I had an interest in learning that. And the more I found out about it, I was like, yeah, that'd be kind of cool. Again, I have an interest in cars and mechanics, and like you do vehicle inspections and things like that. And I was like, oh, well, I think growing up on a farm, I'm kind of handy with, tools and mechanics and stuff like that. So I was like, I think I could contribute something. And so got on the MATE team, and yes, there's a lot of schooling
And math?
and yes, unfortunately, math.
That's the
I'm out.
Yep.
Yeah. So I answered my own question in high school when I argued with my algebra teacher, like, why are you teaching this stuff? No one will ever use this. I don't know a single person that uses algebra. But
the irony.
Yes. Now so
That's like, you'll never have a calculator in your pocket. You need to know this.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
look what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So there's lots of schools you go to. I think there's 3, or at least there used to be 3 schools to get certified, and then there's specialty schools for commercial vehicles and pedestrians and different things like that, where you learn a lot of specialized, formulas and things like that. Like if a body gets hit and gets thrown 20 feet, things like that.
Can you walk us through like a typical MATE call? Like what are the things that you're analyzing and
yeah,
looking
so
for?
in a MATE call, and like I said, I'm speaking from years ago, but I think the questions are still the same. You're trying to find and recreate you get there, and of course you see a car all tore up, and there's maybe a crushed bicycle, and there's a pedestrian who is deceased in the road, and you're trying to figure out, well, what happened here.
Yeah.
And so we do scaled mapping. So it's important to know the correlation of where the car came to final rest, where the bicycle was, where the pedestrian was. You're looking like skid marks. Where did the skid marks, start at? Things like that. And you're ultimately trying to take that crime scene and back it up, really just a few seconds. But it's more than just a few seconds. There's like microseconds in there, and you're trying to go back and determine, how fast was that car traveling. Where was the pedestrian? Which direction was he coming from? That type of thing. Because you're trying to determine, who's at fault. So you've got 75 feet of skid mark. Some of it's past the pedestrian crosswalk, and you've got a pedestrian that's been hit. So who's at fault? Well, okay, typically your first thought is, well, the car has to yield to the person in the crosswalk. But we want to back it up and find out, like, okay, based on what lane the car was in, the pedestrian got hit 3 feet from the curb. So he had just entered the pedestrian crosswalk. Based on where the car was traveling, based on the skid marks, we know it was in this lane. Based on, it took out this headlight, so he hit this part of the car. And, and then we want to show, like, the speed of the car. Would it make a difference if the pedestrian was slightly intoxicated, or maybe the driver was? And, what was the speed of the car? Was it the speed limit, or was he doing, like, 70 miles an hour? Did he have a headlight out, on top of that? And so did the pedestrian see him, or not see him because he was traveling so fast? Or was the pedestrian careless and should have seen him because he was traveling at the speed limit, his headlights were working, they were on, and the pedestrian just stepped out in front of a moving car? Yeah. And so you're trying to, it can make a big difference as to, was the driver at fault or was the pedestrian at fault? And so those are the questions, and the math and the evidence and all that will kind of tell you, like, I'll answer those
so you
questions.
Can, like, look at the skid marks and calculate from that a way to tell what the speed the vehicle is going.
Yeah. You get the friction of the roadway, and you get the car sliding, and which now they don't really slide. There's like ABS, but you can still see like essentially a skid mark. They're lighter because the wheel is locking up intermittently. But if you get there and you look at it, you can kind of see where that friction started, and it will leave a temporary mark on the road. And so you're looking for that kind of stuff. So this is all the training. So there's a lot of science that goes into it, and and of course now cars have, like, black boxes and everything. Now, when I was in mate, that was kind of new, and but that all came out as a result of airbags. And so
were there any notable crashes or investigations over the years that stick with you?
I bet you've seen some horrible crashes.
Yeah. I've done death notifications, because when you come out on the team, you don't always have the same role. Like, I live in Oldsmar, and so if we had a crash in Dunedin, I might get there pretty quick. If we had one down on Indian Rocks Beach, I might be one of the later ones to get there. Or they may say, go straight to the hospital. Like, someone was transported to Tampa General, because a crash happened in Dunedin or something, and they were bay flighted or something like that. So sometimes you're going to the hospital, sometimes you're going to the scene, sometimes you're doing this different stuff, and then sometimes you're doing the death notification. But it's it's sad, because the thing about I know civilians call it traffic accidents, as if crashes happen and you really can't prevent it. But if when we do an investigation, it's a crash report. It's not an accident report. It's a crash report.
Yeah.
And the thing is traffic laws are such that they're really idealistically, there should not be any crashes. If everyone follows the law and starts braking at yellow lights and obeys the speed limits and everything,
drive drunk,
and doesn't drive impaired, and will watch out for pedestrian crossings and things like that, there shouldn't be any traffic fatalities. But that, in reality, people are crossing, they're not looking both ways, they're traveling too fast, they're, maybe not wearing their seatbelt, whatever the case may be. And
legally, there's a difference between something that is a legitimate accident. You hit a spot of, you wouldn't have ice here, but hit water or something and went off the road by accident, driving at a normal speed, safe speed, versus you doing something wrong and somebody dying, right?
Correct. I mean, there's some things, like maybe you didn't know how deep the water was and it jerked the wheel of the car. But, there's a lot of things, where you're supposed to drive in a, you're just because the speed limit's, 55 and it's pouring rain doesn't mean you still have to drive 55.
Right. Yeah,
You maybe should drive, 40 or 45.
So there are a lot that are legitimate accidents. Unpreventable. Yeah. I
mean, like I said, there are, I suppose, some circumstances that are unforeseeable and unavoidable.
But they're nowhere near as common.
Yeah, but they're typically, they're almost all of them are preventable. Had someone, or a couple of things, happen the way they should have.
Yeah. So you were telling me about one on a motorcycle, or two motorcycles,
Yeah. So this was it was when I was working Safety Harbor on midnights. I had just come on, and one of the deputies had like 2 motorcycles just like rip past him super fast. And, he called it out on the radio. And so he gets turned around. By the time he gets turned around, they're gone. He can't see the taillights. So I'm down the road from him, and I don't see him either. But or maybe they passed me. I can't remember. But anyhow, they were too fast to pursue or anything. So I'm driving down Philippi Parkway, and I'm looking down side streets trying to see if I can see some taillights because it's like at midnight. There's really no traffic. And so I come up to this sharp curve, and there's just dust. And it's like, uh-oh. And so then I see like there's this bike on its side up against the guardrail. And so I call it out, get out, go running around, and the biker has been thrown over the guardrail, and he's on the sidewalk over there. So, we're trying to stabilize him and find out, what it is. And then this guy comes up, and he's like yelling and screaming, and do something for him, do something for him. And it's like, we're trying not to like move his head,
Sure.
if he's breathing, that's good. We want, so we got his visor up. So this guy starts yelling like, well, he had a girlfriend. I think there was another rider on the bike. Oh. And we're like, I'm looking around, and I'm like, I don't see anything, So, he's like screaming or whatever. So we start looking around, and sure enough, there is a petite female who was also thrown from the bike. But unfortunately, she hit like one of the signs that was there with the arrow. And so she's between the sign and the back of the guardrail. And so I get to her, and I still remember like one of the few times I think I like got on was like frantically calling for like FD to get there faster, and like somehow they could. But yeah, in examining, she had like blood coming out of her nose and her ears, and I mean she was deceased right there. And it was this guy. It was his high school girlfriend. I think they were engaged, and so the story goes that he had been stopped like a month or so earlier for doing like 70 or 80 miles an hour down a residential street, doing a wheelie or doing something stupid. Had been written a criminal citation, went to court, and he had been to court that like afternoon, like on a Friday afternoon. Oh, wow. And he had his family hired an attorney, and it's like, he was very dumb, but he just got it, and he realizes, he shouldn't do that, and he's really learned from his mistakes, and blah 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 blah. So the judge, gave him a second chance, and reinstated his license or whatever, and and he promised to do better. Well, when he left, he's like, hey, so he calls his buddy who doesn't have a license, but he's like a habitual motorcycle offender, and that's who he's somehow learned some of these bad habits from. And he's like, we should go out, we should take my bike out. I haven't ridden it in like a month, since I got this dumb ticket. And so they end up going over to Ybor or somewhere over there, and they're coming back, like at midnight. And they cut down through Safety Harbor, and they're driving way too fast. And that's how this whole thing started. Yeah. And she's riding on the back of his bike. And so the buddy, the road kind of veers to the right. Well, he goes left in an effort to, the cops won't find us if we go this way. And he's following, which your reaction time is slower. Yeah. And he's got 2 people on his bike. Right. So he can't make the turn, and he loses it, crashes. Mm-hmm. He survives, but he kills his girlfriend / fiance, who was this was like in June or July. She just graduated, like in May. Oh. So, super, super tragic. Super tragic. Yeah.
Is that kind of the majority of the experiences with mate? Unfortunately, it kind of sounds like it would be.
Yeah, like I said, they're deaths or
real bad.
Yeah. There's
Did the kid go to jail this time?
Yes, he did, and I don't know. He may have done some prison time, and I know a part of his probation, of his release, was he had to do like hundreds of hours of community service, and he had to do it with a poster photograph of her within like 10 feet of where he stood, and the poster had to be like 3 feet by 4 feet, and so all his
T-shirt,
all his community service had to be done with
in her honor,
with her watching
a photo of her, which I'm sure it affected him obviously personally, but that's
hopefully, yeah. it caused him to not do anything like that again.
Yeah. So at some point you make traffic, obviously, because I know that was your bread and butter for a
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
But having this experience with mate has to make you a even better traffic guy when you're having those educational discussions. Yeah.
Yes. So, the thing is, I was trying to get the traffic anyhow, and I got the traffic unit, and at the time we had unmarked cars, and it was great. I ended up doing traffic for like 8 or 9 years total.
And just to be clear for folks listening, so obviously all of our deputies out there on the road to mark car, they can conduct traffic stops, they do traffic regularly, but we do have a dedicated traffic unit that is out there exclusively dealing with traffic.
Correct. Yeah. So, and the thing is, we had, not every deputy has radar and laser and all that. I mean, our deputies are not primarily state troopers. So with the traffic unit, we had unmarked cars. We had some of the first video equipment. They were VCRs.
I've heard of those.
Yeah.
Read about it in the
So
encyclopedia.
that was our high tech equipment. We had just gotten laptops, and we had it was for I guess it was just early 2000s, state of the art. But it was a lot of fun. But yes, to the point of mate. I was writing tickets in the daytime to try to avoid going to make calls at night, in essence, because I saw, what people who were reckless, people who were careless, people who weren't wearing seatbelts, people who were just doing dumb things. Unfortunately, I had firsthand seen the results of that.
Sure.
So in a way, yeah, I guess I was doing traffic homicide prevention
Right.
before I was doing crime prevention.
Yeah.
And I feel like traffic people, whether they're in traffic, just deputies, but they always kind of have like a philosophy when it comes to traffic enforcement. Like the way, what's your threshold of those things? What is that for you when you pull somebody over? By the time you're pulling somebody over with the things you've seen, and are you pulling somebody over for a certain speed over? Are you, what's your thought process?
Yeah, I think every deputy kind of has to develop their threshold, like, where, how fast over does someone get stopped,
Right.
So, I mean, it would vary, if it was a school zone, it was one threshold. If it was, regular posted speeds, it was different.
I always tell my son 5 over is safe. He's a new driver.
Yeah.
So is that a good advice for him?
Yeah.
Other than the school zone.
Or Kenneth City.
Well, yeah. His dad's a sergeant there.
That's right. That's right.
He's pretty good in Kansas City.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, it is because, for being cited for unlawful speed, the fines start at 6 over.
Okay.
So you technically can't get a speeding ticket for 1 or 2 miles an hour over.
Okay.
So the fines start at 6 over is the earliest. So yes, I mean, like I said, we're not even striving for perfection. That's. But with unmarked cars and everything, we saw a lot. I got brought to the unit with an aggressive driving grant. So I was aggressive driving deputy, and then we had another grant for aggressive driving vehicle, and we had an unmarked Dodge pickup.
Oh, nice.
And that was the
The
first.
blue one that I've heard of.
The legendary.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that thing on TV when I was a kid, and I thought it was the coolest thing ever because it had like the tonneau cover
Yes.
that popped up and it was lights.
Yes.
I thought that was the coolest
Oh,
thing ever.
it was like I said, for early 2000s, it was like Knight Rider.
Yeah.
It was. We had front cameras, we had rear cameras, we had our new laptops, which were new at the time. We had ticket printers. Then we adopted. Tom Lenkto created the first ADAM program.
AADM.
Yes.
Correct? Yes.
Yeah. And so it would talk to you, and it would auto-populate the citations. And so, this was, this was like,
Cutting edge at the time.
my gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. This was like SpaceX.
Still a VCR though?
Still a VCR. Yes. It was a VCR. And so, we were doing that. We were using the helicopter to catch speeders on the bay side. So I would occasionally go up in the helicopter and run the watches up there. And
because
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. From you'd be driving down the road and say, oh, speed enforced by aircraft. What the hell? How does that work? But you guys are actually, there are timing lines on the Bayside Bridge, and you're timing their speed between them. That's how you're catching them.
Yeah.
I didn't know like a traffic deputy would ride in the Eagle for that. I thought it just like the TFD.
Yeah, because we would go to court to testify if they fought the ticket. So we had to have, so we would have 2 clipboards. We had 2 metal clipboards, and we had a certified stopwatch on each of them. And we had 3 boxes basically out there on the Bayside Bridge. So a mile, I think, is like 5,280 feet. So
five tomatoes.
So
5,280.
So we would have a box that was 280 feet. 528 feet, and so that was 1/10 of a mile. And so you would, as the front bumper would touch the line, you'd start the stopwatch, and as the bumper touched the second line, you'd stop it. And so that was 1/10 of a mile. That was easy to calculate, and so you could very quickly determine what their speed was during that 1/10 of a mile, and then we would follow them. And you could do up to 2 on a pass, and we would follow them over the Bayside. And then as they exited, we had deputies waiting, and we'd be like, okay, it's the 3rd car in the median lane. It's the red one. And then we'd make sure they pulled it into like the church.
One.
And like that is your driver. And then we'd give them all the information, it was box 2. It was this many seconds. He was in the center lane, that type of thing. And then we would turn around and then do it all over again. And so we would patrol.
Do we do that anymore?
We haven't done it in a while. Yeah.
What was the high score on the Bayside that you saw?
Oh, we had some triple digits out there.
Yeah.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
Which on the Bayside, it's like this. So I
I
can
know,
only imagine when you're going northbound.
I do speed records on Gandy, not on the Bayside. The porpoising is just too much. Yeah, I mean it's crazy, and obviously the number one complaint we always have. I mean, when the sheriff speaks to the public, it's like, the number one complaint people have is traffic.
Yep.
While it's mainly the biggest cause for work for us is people leaving their damn doors unlocked. We'll talk about that later. But what did that enforcement look like for aggressive driving? As the aggressive driving deputy, I assume you didn't just drive aggressively
And
everywhere.
what is aggressive driving too? How do you define
exactly.
that? Yeah.
Yeah, I try to remember what the state statute is.
I mean, you're out there.
I think it's 2 or more violations that happen in close proximity or something like that.
So that could be a combination of speeding, improper lane change, whatever.
Following too closely.
So you're just going in with a flow of traffic looking for things.
Yeah,
and
so
then you hit the transformer button, and it's like
so we had unmarked Crown Victorias, and they had like the black grill and the black between the taillights. They're pretty easy to spot if you're a kid and we're looking for them. But this pickup truck, no one had a pickup truck. I mean, now they do Largo and Pinellas Park. A bunch of people have used trucks and still do, but this was the first, and people were
blown away.
They were not prepared for they were not prepared for a pickup truck to stop. And so I had a front camera, a rear camera, and so just driving around
constantly recording, or you would turn it on.
No, you couldn't constantly record because you, like I said, you're limited to these VHS tapes, and
tape runs out.
So we would but you could hit record if you saw someone who looked like they had the potential, or they were driving aggressively, doing a lot of lane changes, tailgating, that type of thing. And so we would try to capture that on video and then, perform a traffic stop.
What is tailgating?
Well, it's just you have to articulate that they're following too close for the flow of traffic. I mean, I think there's a rule of thumb. You should be one car length for every 10 miles an hour.
Right.
But
no one does that.
But yeah, that's probably.
I got to steer. I can't count.
You're right. But articulating that, the flow of traffic, I observed the vehicle, at 60 miles an hour on US 19, and he was approximately, 8 feet from the bumper, and then, made an aggressive lane change without using his blinker, and was doing it again, and then he made another change and cut off someone and barely missed the bumper by, approximately 4 feet as he made another lane change. Like, that's how you would...
like justify a citation?
Yeah, you would do
for aggressive driving?
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Can you get a ticket just for tailgating? Is that
you can, yeah.
You can?
I mean, there's careless, and then if it's, much more dangerous, there's reckless driving. And then on citations, there was like an aggressive driving box that you would check that,
Gotcha.
this offense occurred while they were also doing aggressive driving. And I think if it didn't, I don't think it changed the penalty, but if it did go to court, the judge had the right then to, up the fine, because it was, it wasn't just that they were careless or just that they cut someone off, but it was, they had a pattern of doing
Yeah.
all this during aggressive driving.
I mean, and the kind of, it's going to sound stupid. I don't know how to say it. Like the more advanced level that you have as a traffic deputy. I mean, you're doing a lot. Did you find yourself like overall, like, are most people taking you to court, or is that a minority, or?
Most people did not, but I usually had video, to kind of back up what I was doing. If I was, sitting on a stop sign or a red light or something like that, now our videos now are much, much better because they back up 30 seconds. And with the VCR, you hit record and there's about a 2-second delay before it finally starts moving the magnetic tape. So many times I did not have the actual violation, but we tried to. But yeah, we were pretty creative back in the days. We would get like the county sign truck and park it, on the side of the road, and we'd sit up there and do laser enforcement from the platform, or observe red light violations, and sometimes record it because they have like a little platform they work on, and so we would use county equipment and dress up as construction workers and things like that to
Undercover traffic.
Yeah. And there was a big push certainly back then with seat belts. Now everything dings and annoys you and everything else with seat belts. But back then in the early 2000s, there was a lot of vehicles that you could bypass it or whatever, and a lot of people just didn't wear seat belts. So we were trying to get seat belt usage up. And again, back to my mate investigations and traffic homicide, you could it was a stark difference with someone who wore a seat belt versus someone who did not wear a seat belt.
Best excuse you ever heard for speeding? Besides, I have to poop. Anything stand out?
There was a guy, his wife was in labor, and so...
She was for real, though?
Yeah.
Was she in the car?
She was not.
Okay.
But he was headed...
That was a good question.
Yeah, so, and this one actually got verified. So this guy was in an F-250, and I stopped him, and he's like, yeah, I just got a phone call. My wife's, like she's pregnant, she's at the hospital, da-da-da. And so he seemed very sincere, and, this wasn't like something that he, had been, scheming to rattle off. So I'm like, okay, just, get there safely. Like, nothing worse than missing the birth of your child because you got into a crash.
Right.
So just, but please slow down. So then, like 3 months later, I find out that he's actually a friend of a neighbor, and he's like, "Oh yeah, you stopped my friend, Bill, and he wants to say thank you. Like, his wife gave birth, and he got." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Good. Look at that.
Should have named his kid after you.
Yeah.
There should be a little Chuck out there.
Sure.
Little skip. Wow.
So we no longer do the aerial enforcement. There's another thing that we don't do I think at all now, and that's the checkpoint. But checkpoints used to be big when we were working
DUI
traffic,
checkpoints.
Right? Yeah.
Every time that we post about DUI wolf packs, we get comments about people believing that it's a checkpoint.
Yeah. And we haven't done them for a while.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
Yeah, we
stopping here.
don't really do them anymore.
Yeah,
It's
I think it was
just
some
not
grant
worth it.
money or something like that we would do those, and to be in the running, you had to do 24 a year, and so we would do like one a month, but we'd do one before midnight and then one after midnight.
Get
and
you two on a technicality.
so it was, there were 2 different days. One was a Saturday, one was a Sunday, or something like that, or Friday and Saturday. And but we would, it was like an army. I mean, we had the command bus, we had DUI units, we had traffic units, we had CPOs, we had cadets out there, we had cone trailers, we had sign trailers that had to be moved. We gathered all this stuff together. We set it up. We had different lanes, so when people came in, there was like 4 or 5 different lanes because we.
And you would stop people randomly, right? It wasn't every.
It was
vehicle
predetermined.
or-
Like we had a plan ahead of time. We would run through the state's attorney's office. Based on this roadway, we're going to stop every 10th car, 7th car.
Okay.
And so
So that way it's fair.
and so it was just completely random. We weren't, so every 7th car got pulled in, got detoured, got brought through. We'd ask for their license. Traffic deputies were sitting there in our vehicles. The DUI unit typically made contact with them to see if they could detect any signs of impairment. I'm running the license very quickly just to make sure they don't have a warrant, they're valid, and in like 30 seconds, boom, thank you, have a great night, stay safe, and they're gone. But we would get people who had warrants, we get people who were driving on suspended license, we get people who were intoxicated, that came through there. And so, but it was a lot of work. And then we did that for 2-3 hours, and we packed it all up, and we went somewhere else and did it all over again.
Whoa.
Yes. So,
what were some of the roadways you would do it on?
we did 19. We did it on the beaches.
Gosh, what an undertaking! All the traffic
State
on
Road
a
5,
big road like
State
that.
Road 580 and Dunedin. So East Lake, Keystone Road we did a couple times. A couple of streets, main streets, like 4-lane roads.
And you advertised them before, right?
Yeah, so that was a requirement. You advertised them. We had a sign that said DUI checkpoint ahead.
And you didn't stop the vehicles at the
That's what I want to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we did have deputies who, if a vehicle did, and you had to have a place for them to turn around. It wasn't like, they had to dive off through the median. Like where the sign was, there had to be like a clear
opportunity.
for them to, take a U-turn. And so you wouldn't get stopped for doing that, but we had people who would then follow that person
To make sure they're not drunk.
and if they appeared impaired, to be like, okay, I'm not stopping you because you made a U-turn. I'm stopping because you can't maintain your lane.
They can still read though.
Apparently, yes.
Could have been that bad.
Yes. So, intoxication,
They were like, it's like 0.09.
Right.
but
Yeah.
still.
Like
So,
these.
like I said, it was a lot of people, it was a lot of work, a lot of equipment, a lot of assets that were being moved. But yeah, and we did that for a couple of years. It was a big undertaking.
Any big misconceptions you think the public has about traffic enforcement?
Well, nobody likes getting a ticket, and and that's probably, from a PR standpoint, it's probably the thing that everyone fears and dislikes the most about the police. And if I got in this job and wanted to be liked, I would have been a fireman, right? Everyone loves firemen. They don't write tickets, and they show up when in times of crisis. But with the police, we show up in times of crisis typically. But with a ticket, you're doing something, and you think it's not that bad. Your interpretation
You're
is
interrupted.
Yeah, this is a stupid speed limit, or I've waited long enough for this red light, or it was orange when I went through it, or whatever,
Right.
And so we give those citations, but again, it's kind of like the prevention side of it, in that there is a consequence to getting a little too fast and loose, literally with the traffic laws, and you maybe feel like you're an excellent driver and that type of thing, but your speed and your actions and being somewhat careless and flagrant with obeying the rules of the road not only endanger yourself but others.
Yeah.
On social, any of our safety tips related to traffic just get blown up with comments. And there's so many people that say, thank you so much, keep doing this. And they're excited. And just as many people are saying things like, I'm going to speed down this road faster,
Right.
It's so interesting how
You should be stopping all the murders and rapists instead of stopping the
or
speeders.
do something
Right.
more important.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also love, just the people that say, and we clap back on them sometimes, but it's like, yeah, you guys never do X, Y, Z, or you're never there or whatever. And it's like, are you like sitting there the entire day, or are you just surprised there isn't a deputy there the 25 seconds it takes you to drive through that intersection? Like, what are you talking about? We're out there all the time jamming on. Now, there are things that are a little more pressing that deputies get called to, obviously. That's why we have dedicated units for some of that. But it is always interesting to see the
And the other
side
thing
of
is, we're driving around a billboard. These things have massive reflective letters that
Right.
that,
Say sheriff.
It doesn't matter if it's sheriff's office, police,
yeah.
whatever. They're billboards, and and for that moment when people see that, maybe they don't
Think
run a red
twice.
light. Yeah, I mean people still do, but I certainly see a lot more traffic violations when I'm not working and I'm off duty in my personal vehicle than I do in my marked patrol vehicle.
And that kind of makes me think about any time that I have posted about, it could be anything, but if the vehicle is unmarked, whether it's a sergeant's Tahoe or anything, some people get into that debate of whether or not all of our vehicles should be super marked. Why are you hiding? And then there's other people, when I post a totally marked Tahoe doing enforcement at a school zone, they're like, oh no, you need to be hiding and get those people.
Right.
Like, it's so interesting how torn people can be about something like this. That's really, we're doing it to save your life.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
critical thinking is at an all-time low.
it's,
But that's all right. Job security, right?
yeah.
So you do traffic for how long? And then your first stint in crime prevention has got to be coming up there at some point.
Yeah. So I'd stayed in probably traffic way too long. You know, like you should move around the agency, but I enjoyed it. I felt, you know, empowered by it, like I was making a difference. You know, like, and so I really enjoyed doing that. And but what interrupted it was the Great Recession, and so we had, you know, major budgetary constraints. You know, for the first time ever in law enforcement, you know, we actually laid deputies off. And so the traffic unit, the UI unit, things like that got scaled back to the point that they were temporarily dissolved and things like that. So I went back to patrol, and then had the opportunity to come to crime prevention. So my wife, the hours she works, she's in retail sales and stuff like that. So she works nights and weekends and everything. And we had a daughter who was, I don't know, she was probably about 8 or 10 or something at the time. And so I was trying to get to do something that I would be home nights and weekends to cook, help with homework, take her to the ballet on Saturday.
Mr. Mom.
Yep. So,
call.
So it was like, you know, one of us is kind of decide, you know, like, you know, one of us is going to, you know, kind of have more of a normal job. And so I was like, so I was able to. So crime prevention.
Provided that schedule.
Yeah. So I probably initially I was like, oh, well, that'd be good. You know, like I didn't really understood what all it was. But I mean, I've definitely drank the Kool-Aid, and you know, I'm all into crime prevention, and I wholeheartedly believe that there is a definitive role in educating people to better protect themselves.
Yeah, I mean, and obviously you guys are great partners for us on messaging and things. But I mean, even, you know, when I started, you were there back in 2013. And I mean, it's just tremendous what you guys do. And unfortunately, and this is not on you guys, but just unfortunately, the public interest, you know, is always shifting and changing. You know, and I know you talk about it, but you know, neighborhood watches, you know, those things. We've just my time, the last 11 years, I've seen how, you know, the interest shift. You certainly have a certain demographic of residents that are participating in neighborhood watch. There's a generation where you're used to getting to know your neighbors and fraternization and a lot of those things that kind of dwindle and shift. So your job, in addition to, which at its core is just purely trying to put us out of business, really, is what it is. Because, you know, and the sheriff says it all the time, we want to, you know, we of course want to effectively investigate crime and find justice, but what we'd really like to do is prevent it from happening in the first place. So you guys have the keys to the kingdom, really, the solution, but it's hard to get the public, you know, on board with it. And you guys are like monks. You're just dedicated and you're going forward no matter what. Now I just got to see, we got to Photoshop you and Dan and Jessica in cloaks or something. But I mean, you guys are just so dedicated to what you do. And it always is very impressive to me, because it's like, listen, this we're going to beat on this drum forever, because it's so much of it is so preventable.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think the public is, many times they're unaware of just the things that they're doing that, you know, puts them at danger of being a victim to a crime that, with a few simple things, they could avoid.
Right, simple.
Avoid this. Yeah, it's nothing necessarily complex. The thing I've, you know, in my years of working in law enforcement, most criminals are not that sophisticated. They're just looking for easy opportunities. Like I tell people when I do my neighborhood watch, burglary does not pay well enough that it's a full-time job. Typically, this is like some criminals like side hustle. You know, he may have a job where he drives around, he, you know, does some kind of job, you know, that he makes, you know, minimum salary, but he supplements his income. And maybe he started when he was 14. I don't know, you know, what the psychological route for someone who wants to steal other people's property is. but there are people who do it, and it's not just kids. It's not just teenagers. It's people who are in their 20s and 30s that I don't know if they enjoy it or there's enough financial gain in it that they continue to do that. Mm-hmm. And so like just some simple things like leaving your garage door open. A lot of people are like, well, I live in a nice community. Well, yes, you do live in a nice community, and guess what? Burglars would love to steal from homes in a nice community because they have nice stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
McAllister's lived in a nice neighborhood.
And the thing about a garage door open, people understand like, oh yeah, well I wouldn't leave it open all night, duh. But it's like, well, leaving it open during the day, you can get a burglar who just walks up the driveway and steals something out of the car that's maybe unlocked in the garage, or steals some tools or gloves.
Sees what's in there for later.
Anything,
Correct.
yeah. And we have garage burglaries that happen, at 2 p.m. So you got to keep your garage doors closed, And same way with locking your car doors. I mean, it's not a nighttime thing. It's
right.
It's.
Yeah, that one really, I think, blows all of our minds, mostly because we see it literally every day when we're looking at the nightlies and things that are happening. But not only that people leave their cars unlocked, but then the things they leave in their cars, of course, most notably firearms, which there's a lot of responsibility that comes with firearm ownership. So I feel like that's like a clue there that you probably shouldn't have a gun if you're not responsible enough to secure it. But when you're out there talking to the public, whether it be a random presentation here or there, neighborhood watch, do you find that people do they defend leaving their car doors unlocked, or are they just cavalier about it, or what do they have to say when you're out there?
I think they're just unaware of the danger that it is, and that, they assume, it's not that big a deal.
Not going to happen to me.
Yeah, it's daytime. It's a nice neighborhood. This is a nice shopping center. I mean, if I thought about it, I'd lock it, but I didn't. No big deal. That type of thing. What are the odds? I've accidentally left my car unlocked 100 times and nothing's happened.
Right.
But then 101 is when something inside gets stolen. Like your gun.
Right. And then, there's also something I see a lot and hear a lot is, oh, well, I don't want to, I shouldn't have to live in fear type thing, or that's your problem.
Yeah. Some people are like, I can live as careless and
it's my problem, personal responsibility.
Right. Yeah, I shouldn't have any personal responsibility. That's why I pay you taxes to protect me, and I shouldn't have any responsibility for keeping myself safe or my property. We're not asking for people to, the expectation is not that you go out and spend, large sums of money and, for surveillance systems and all that. I mean, some people do, but, what we're trying to do is just a lot of simple things. And we've been kind of harping on property crimes, but, the same thing goes for scams. There's been this massive rise in scams like in the last 10 or 15 years that, unlike it has never existed before. And with everyone having cell phones and smartphones and access to the internet and text messages, and now these things can be generated, and thousands of text messages and emails and all this kind of stuff can be sent out. This is kind of like the new territory. It's a high risk or low risk, high reward type crime. And the thing is like a property crime. If someone breaks into your garage or your car, they have to be physically here in Pinellas County.
Right.
And so there's a good chance that they live here or they live in a surrounding area.
Right.
But when someone commits a crime on your phone and they trick you into sending $2,500, they could be anywhere in the world.
Right.
And they often are.
And they often are. So, and the scam
world.
thing is something that is evolving, and that people, that's a big push of stuff that we're doing. They're constantly becoming more and more creative. And so that is our latest challenge, just to get people more familiar with things, and not to respond and get emotionally involved immediately, when you get a text message that says something's been canceled or you owe money,
right,
and that type of thing, to be, skeptical of that.
And I guess it's just, I'm very naive on this, but it is, it absolutely, from where I sit and seeing how much not only we message, but how much messaging is out there from local partners, community partners, state law enforcement, federal law enforcement about these sorts of things, and people still fall for it.
Yes.
I mean, I am 34 years old, and I've never been close to getting got on some of that stuff. But some of the stuff you look at and you go, well, that's pretty good. But you know what? If I don't know, first of all, if I don't know the number that's calling me, and this is one that really blows my mind, especially with the older population. Like, if you don't know who is calling you, don't answer it.
It's astonishing that people answer the phone.
You don't have to answer.
All.
Like I mean, even I,
even
again,
for friends.
I'm involved in a lot of things. I'm busy with this job. I have some other things. I'm not answering the phone if I know the number. They can leave a message or send me a text. And, you know, sometimes if I'm expected to call, I might answer it. But then if it starts, I just hang up.
I think sometimes people think it's rude.
Yeah,
if
they feel
don't
like they
answer.
have to engage.
I don't know if it's a particular generation
Yeah, I mean,
or.
but it is just, I cannot, it's one of those things, like, I cannot even begin to wrap my head around. And I don't know how, I mean, I don't know how you combat it. You guys are out there marching. We're posting stuff out there, and it's like, oh, this nice young man called, and he wants a block of gold, so I sent it to him. Like, what?
Yeah.
Who does that?
Yeah, so there's, like I said, a lot of this is, you know, bad behaviors. You know, well, they're not bad behaviors, but, you know, it's maybe like Ashley said, it's a generational thing where if someone calls, I answer, you know, and I don't know, decades ago, you know, when someone did call, they actually did want to talk to you. You know, and very rarely did you actually get a sales call. But, I mean, those have become, you know, I get more of those than anything. But there's just some of these habits that people are in that, you know, when we're out talking to them, we have to caution them as to why, you know, they need to reconsider what they've always done, you know, and maybe there was a reason that they did it at one time, but now it's more of a liability. It increases your risk, you know, answering the phone, you know, using a debit card versus a credit card. You know, it's like, well, what do you mean? I don't understand. You know, it's a piece of plastic. You know, it's so much easier for me to use. It's like, yes, I get it. You're not wrong. It does work and it's convenient. I'm not arguing that, but you know, for the example of like a debit card, that is your money, and if that card gets compromised, which
Happens.
You know, there's lots of ways that can happen, and if that gets compromised, then it's your money that's stolen, not Visa, MasterCard, Discover. It's your money. And it's much more difficult to fight that, get it back, that type of thing. And so, you know, using a credit card, you know, protects you. You can also increase your credit rating and score, because using a debit card, you don't do anything with your credit score either. So there's several benefits, but people have no one's ever talked to them, and they've never really thought like, oh, I just did what was, you know, it came out of my checking account and that was most convenient. Yes, most convenient, but you're putting yourself at risk really for no reason.
Right.
And so it's really about explaining that. And that's why we really like to get out and talk to people. And we do like the little reels, and we try to kind of cram, you know, like a little
tidbit.
A little informational, you know, little stack of knowledge there, and kind of cram it into 30 seconds. But, you know, I really enjoy getting out and talking to people and explaining, you know, how some of these scams are being perpetrated, you know, and some of the similar ways that they're being done. Like the scams can be different, but there's really 3 or 4 different ways that they all kind of have a same theme. And if you're, you know, being asked for money, but they don't want a credit card, they want gift cards, they want cryptocurrency, they want, you know, you to, you know, put cash in a box and they'll send somebody or something that's just not normal. Like any business, they, you know, whatever, they'll take a credit card. But scammers won't, because they know that you can cancel that and they won't get their money. So they're asking for money in other ways. So, I mean, there's their huge red flag. Doesn't matter what the scenario is. There's a family member that's been hospitalized or in jail, or you owe money and you're going to have services turned off, but you need to pay via gift card. Stop.
Right.
Gift cards are for gifts. They're not to be used for payment.
And also, I mean, to our friends maybe listening that work in retail, at the Publix's, CVS's, Walgreens of the world, if you got a little old lady on the phone taking instruction from somebody buying Apple gift cards, like, hello.
Yes.
Like,
yes.
I still can't. Do you think this is something that, you know, I mean, obviously we also got the rise of AI and voice spoofs and things like that, which is next level. But they probably spoof all of us since we're on podcasts. So
Big time, they can
Yeah.
spoof us.
But do you think that as generations move along, that it kind of starts to taper off because you have a generation that grows up dealing with scams? Or do you think that they'll always just keep finding some way to blow our minds? Because I'm not saying I'm impossible to fool, but like I said, I don't respond to texts, I don't click on links, I don't answer my phone. Like, what's next?
Yeah, maybe, because again, I've been doing this a long time, and I know 10 years ago or longer, there was a lot of interest and concern about internet safety. And, kids were starting to play video games, and there was all these different apps and chat rooms and things like that. And it was relatively new. Parents were completely unfamiliar with it, and they were concerned, for good reason. And so we did a lot of presentations and education on what parents could do to minimize and better monitor what their kids were doing online. And like I said, from 10 or 15 years ago, we're getting less and less requests because I think parents are better informed. This stuff is not so foreign, and they've set up some rules, some house rules that hopefully they're doing a much better job. They're not as fearful. It's not as unknown, that type of thing. So to your point, perhaps in another 10 or 20 years, kids who are just now getting phones and things like that, and they know all these text messages and things are just scams.
Yeah, because I think technology catches up too, right? I mean, the best example really is vehicle safety, because now you've got the thing in your car that is dinging and won't shut up until you put your seatbelt on. Your music might be turned down until you put your seatbelt on. When you put your car in reverse. I mean, there's a lot of things that have come in over the years to improve vehicle safety and behavior.
Right.
That happens with electronic devices. A lot of the social media platforms and gaming consoles, whatever, they have parental controls and all those things that have come in. So maybe just our iPhones or Androids tell us it's a scam likely call. So you hope that technology kind of tries to keep up. Is there anything that I know there's a lot of things, but anything in particular that you think where the private sector, producers of things, makers of things, whatever, options and opportunities out there for them that would make your job easier?
Speaking about how the technology is getting better on detecting and helping citizens and everything, what concerns me is this next level artificial intelligence and things like that. I think there's going to be another couple of generations that will have to relearn. When they get a phone call and it sounds exactly like a loved one, and has a conversation with them explaining why they need money, and it needs to be paid in gift cards. They're going to miss that part and be like, my sister needs my help, and the scenario that she laid out, she needs gift cards, and that's going to somehow seem believable. So that that concerns me. That it's just kind of like warfare, we come out with, something, and then we come out with something that, a shield or something that can withstand that. And then then they come out with something that's faster and stronger or whatever. And it really is kind of a war with criminals. And the thing is this stuff will get better, but then criminals, unfortunately, will also get better.
Yeah, it's an arms race.
It's an arms race. And they're using the technology to, one up, And so this is why, certainly with crime prevention, we're constantly evolving, because we're seeing what the latest scams are, what some of the latest techniques are. Because frankly, if we're teaching the same thing we were 10 years ago, we'd be outdated. And this is where it is frustrating. You're talking about the demographics and things like that. Is that people feel like, I know what's going on, I know how to protect myself. And it's like, well, you're doing a pretty good job, but you're 10 or 15 years behind,
right?
And you're not aware of what criminals are now doing or what they're capable of, because it's not your job to keep up with this stuff. I get it. But so in crime prevention, that's what we're hoping to better educate people as to, this is the weapons, so to speak, and it could be, and a lot of this is technology that's tricking people, or getting them to, fall victim to these crimes.
So locking your vehicle, obviously securing your property, scam awareness, things like that. What else is out there that the public should try to focus on and concern themselves with? Anything beyond those items?
Still, we do personal safety, and the biggest thing there is situational awareness. And again, I feel like people, when I do this, one of the questions about midway through the presentation is, at what distance should you be aware of, of someone who is,
Approaching you?
or
near you?
or that you would, as I try to remember how the slide goes, at what distance should you have a heightened sense of awareness of a stranger, And I go around the room, and invariably I get answers from, 5 feet, maybe 10, and so, I move the slide, and, it says 30 to 50 feet. And I'm like, you need time to, you need to like basically retune your radar.
Right.
And instead of looking 8
Right.
and 10 feet around you, you need to be looking 30, 40, 50 feet out, because that's when you need to be like, wait a second, that guy looks odd. He's staring at me.
Or he doesn't need to be.
Or why is he wearing a coat? Or,
Right.
why is he out here walking, at 4 a.m? He doesn't have a dog. I have a dog, but why is he out here? And he's dressed all in black or whatever.
Right.
And so at that distance, then you can see him. You've got now, maybe he's at the same time he's walking towards you. You've got a moment or two to formulate like why this is odd. And then now you've got to respond like, you know what? I'm just going to go across the street to the other sidewalk.
Switch sides,
because I don't need to pass this guy.
Right. Then if he switches sides, then
then like, okay, time to run or something. But
Right.
but at 10 feet, when you're just scrolling on your phone or talking to your dog, and now you meet this guy, out here at 5 o'clock in the morning, at 10 feet away from you, it's too late. I mean, your options are super limited, because he's literally almost within an arm's length of you. So that's just one of the things with situational awareness that, we talk about how, criminals are, I use the analogy like lions on the Serengeti. I mean, they're fast, they're powerful, they got big teeth, they got big claws, but they're out here looking at a flock of antelope or water buffalo or whatever.
Finding the weakest.
And I'm like, what are they looking for?
And the weakest is the distracted.
Yeah, are they looking for the strongest one with the most meat on it? That would make sense. That's the one to
ideal,
kill.
yeah.
But no, they don't. And why? Because all the meat tastes the same. So they're looking for the straggler. They're looking for the weakest. They're looking for the one that, it's the easiest to prey. And criminals are no different. And so, the thing is, they're looking for someone who is distracted. They're looking for someone who doesn't show up on their radar until they're 10 feet away instead of 50 feet away. They're looking for, the person that they can get in close to, because you know what? Everyone's got a wallet. Everyone's got, a car key, maybe in the parking lot. Like, I don't care what kind of car I steal. I don't care what kind of, what's in your purse. Your purse is the same as your purse. It's not a, like I'm going to hold out and wait for, like, it's just kind of like the water buffalo type thing. Like, the meat's the same, the purses are the same. If I can get it, use a credit card, steal your purse, that type of thing. I'm looking for the easiest opportunity. So I think that's another thing that people have just kind of gotten lax on.
Yeah. So
For sure.
extend your radar out there, look further ahead, walk with purpose, don't be distracted.
Yeah.
Right. And I think just making eye contact with somebody that's 30, 50
Huge.
feet away that's looking at you could be enough for them to be like, not you.
Let them know that you see them.
Yeah. I know as a young woman, if I'm alone anywhere, I'm super vigilant. But it's more than just young women. Like they'll target
anybody,
They'll target anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. Because whether it's your purse or my wallet, it's
still money.
it's still money or a credit card or
Phones,
whatever,
whatever.
phone or, jewelry, whatever. It's again, it's who is the easiest target,
Right.
Is
there, I mean, I see it all the time. There'll be just some shareable on social media, something going around that's like some tip or this happened and always do this or always do that. Is there anything that you see out there that people bring up to you guys that is just completely useless information, completely false, or even some of those things you see out there like, you know, like you see one where it's like, oh, there's, you know, somebody puts a note on your windshield.
Oh,
you know,
yeah. Or they put a zip tie on your door handle.
Like something like these things, and then, you know, it's spread out there like this is a massive thing that happens.
Yeah, I send those videos to them. I'm like, is this happening here?
Yeah.
Should we cover it?
So are there any of those things that's like, this is just completely fabricated, and the tactics that are being suggested here are useless?
I don't know if they're fabricated. There may have been an example. There may have been, you know, maybe there was a guy in a state at one time that was leaving zip ties or notes on windshields or something like that, you know. But you know, what we try to put out are things that are happening here, because we don't want to overwhelm people with what could happen. Right. And you know, those videos and things, they are plausible. And I, you know, I don't know if I don't run them. I don't dismiss them as scams. I just think like, okay, it was a one-off. You know, there was that one time, you know, that some criminal did something and it happened to work because they put a note on a windshield wiper and the person got out and then they jumped in their car and stole it or something. You know, like okay, like, you know, I you know, that could work. It could have happened. Not really seeing a lot of that here. Not seeing any of it here. Not to say that it couldn't happen. So I don't know. I give them the benefit that, you know, that they're well intended on this, but you know, at the same time, all these various things that are being, you know, reported and things you should always do, you know, it's a little bit with a grain of salt. That, you know, I in my intent, it's not to scare people. You know, I don't want people fearful and thinking everywhere they're going there's a boogeyman or something like that. But
confidence.
But you know, it's a confidence thing. You know, like, you know, walk with your keys in your hand. You know, if you're on the phone, like, hey, I'm getting ready to walk out into the parking lot. It's dark. I'll call you once I'm in my car. You know, it's like a habit type thing. You know, it's like, well, I've been walking, you know, across the parking lot talking, you know, for years and nothing's happened. You know what? Nothing may ever happen. Right. But because you're on your phone and you're talking and everything, like, you didn't see the person run up behind you and shove you, push you down or something. And so, you know, it's kind of those things where I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, but you could do it a little better. You know, it's, you know, you're not completely unsafe, you know, walking and talking on a cell phone, but there are certain situations that it's better just to be like, let me call you back in a few minutes when I'm in the car, you know, and, you know, and I make it, and I can have my head on a swivel. I can be looking around. I can see if there's somebody else out here in this dark parking lot. Right. I can, you know, get in my car. I've got a free hand because it's not wrapped around a phone, and I can get in the car, lock the doors, crank up, start moving, and then I can talk to you hands free. You know.
Yeah, and that kind of covers some of the zip tie on the car. Like, you're not going to look around your car and do this full inspection before you go in. Get in your car and go about your business. So it kind of, you know, we're still covering that to some extent.
So we touched on it a bit, but and in the intro, but you do find yourself on Instagram Reels for us, talking about sometimes doing really informative stuff. Actually, I think Chuck is behind some of our most popular videos ever.
Surprisingly,
I'm not.
Correct.
You know, I don't know if,
not
I don't
surprising.
Know, yeah, not surprisingly, but what were you always like? You know, obviously you're passionate about crime prevention. We have to go where the people are, and it's social media. But how does it feel to kind of have a little bit of celebrity? Do people recognize you on the streets?
No,
that has happened, hasn't it?
I think like once or twice.
At least when you're in uniform.
In uniform. I'll be somewhere and they're like, "Wait, you know," and they follow us or something. So that has happened. But I'm totally blown away that, you know, some of these things have gotten, you know, millions of views. I mean, it's just I didn't think it was anything
special.
You know, and then there's other ones that we put so much work into. And you know, we think are so clever, and we're so you know we're so proud of, and then you know, like we get like 8,000 people, and
you know, you're being humble about it, but you know, some of this stuff is your mastermind. You know, we come up with, I think, particularly of the beach theft video. I mean, you know, do you have a favorite that you've done as far as what you enjoyed doing and you thought made the biggest impact?
I mean, the beach one was fun, and it did really well.
Get buried in the sand in full uniform.
I I hatched that, but you don't know till you climb in that hole. Like, is this really going to work?
Going to work out, and hopefully
Yeah.
we're not on a turtle nest.
Yeah, right, right. But
And there were some ad lib lines there too, which was great. That's,
Yeah.
100%.
That's the thing. Like, Chuck has a gift. Okay,
He truly does.
And like that one. And call your mom. Like that was fantastic.
Oh, and yeah, that was on the fly. That was there. It was awesome. Like, you do have a gift. You know how to talk to a camera and not sound like a robot. And
It's a very rare gift, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It is rare. It's hard to find people that can talk naturally to a camera. It feels like as if they're talking to a person. But of course, we're always trying to be as versatile as possible. But definitely, you have a gift for doing it and building the scripts. And we plan all of these safety tips together. And many of the crazy zany ones are born from Chuck's mind. That we just roll with and figure out how to make it happen.
Scary place,
It's oh my god,
but a very safe place.
I love brainstorming. I love brainstorming with crime prevention on this stuff because you just never know where the conversation's going to go, and it's also just I know you all are in the same place, but it's just something that I feel like is some of the most important work that we can do is putting messaging out there. And what's kind of cool is that with Instagram at minimum, our reach goes far beyond Pinellas. So we could be helping way more people
this stuff's
than we
universal.
originally intended.
Right.
So
That's huge. And there's stuff on the cutting room floor that's never going to see the light of day, but there's some damn good
100%.
stuff in there.
100%.
We got the holiday Chuck on a truck screaming at people with a megaphone in the parking lot of Countryside Mall, reminding people to lock their doors. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there. But we do appreciate your partnership and willingness to play along. Did anybody else have something we wanted to hit them with?
I do. I have a so you were talking about Mate and how you guys basically reconstruct the
crime scene.
I was going to say accident, crash, or the crime scene. And we've talked before about covering when an accident or a crash does happen, telling people to get off the road, like making that the number one thing, that get off the road because that's safer for you. And I think people don't want to do that. That's not their normal reaction because they want deputies to know, to be able to see what happened, to know I didn't do it. It's not my fault. What do you have anything like to add to that? Like, no, actually we can figure that out.
Yeah, correct. So state statute says that if the vehicles are operative, that you should get off the road. So even in state statute, it says please do that. And the thing is, we can kind of figure it out. If the back end of your car smashed and the front end of your car smashed, I can kind of put that back together. That
even
does,
a non-mate deputy.
Yes,
probably.
exactly. So I mean, when mate comes out, we're doing traffic homicide, and these are very complex scenes, and there's serious injury and possibly death, or there has been a death. But for the typical accident, yes, the worst place to be is in the roadway. It's dangerous because people aren't expecting cars to be stopped in the middle of the road. Typically cars are moving. And so when there's been a crash, there's likely to be a secondary crash. You could be struck again. And then too often I see people out, and I get it. They're curious. They want to see the damage. They want to see how bad it is. Maybe they want to be photographing it and that kind of stuff. But standing out, in the road with your car in the road, standing between the cars, taking pictures, looking underneath, seeing if there's fluid leaking or whatever. It's so dangerous, so dangerous. So, if, just a little PSA, if you're involved in a minor crash, please, try to get off the road if you can into a parking lot somewhere it's safe. Police will be on the way. If you can't, or it's a busy road and that type of thing, just stay in your vehicle. You're much safer in your vehicle. If someone was to skid in there and not see you until the last minute, you're going to be much safer there than standing outside.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that when we were talking, Mate.
Yeah,
I was like, because that's a video where
people
that's
do
in
it
the
all
works
time.
at some point.
Yeah, you drive and you see with this backup, and it's for a minor fender bender. It's like that. Just push that stuff. I mean, you can drive off the road with that. You're good to go.
Yes.
So no,
yes.
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So besides, do you have something else?
I don't think so, unless you had anything that you wanted to share about what we're like on social or anything like that, like with the crime tips, anything further you're hoping to cover, or I don't know.
No, I just when I think the well is dry, like a little bit seeps in, and we have great meetings, creative meetings, and I do my best creative thinking out loud. So, we're talking and listening, and then I'll get an ideal and like, oh, that's great. I just thought of something, and we kind of add on to it or change it, and that's kind of how these scripts go. Like Ashley will write something that makes me sound like I might even be college educated, and unfortunately I can't follow it, and so 3/4 of the way through I just start ad-libbing, and so it changes.
It works.
And it works, but
that's why you're good on camera, because that's how you talk.
I think that's why a lot of your videos are so popular, is because you're very relatable. Not only are you speaking to the camera like it's a person, just the vernacular that you're using is very relatable. And
some great bloopers too that are not safe for the Instagram.
Not safe for work.
But,
yeah. And then you also, since you are a traffic guy, you do quite a few traffic safety related reels, and that pisses people off, and that is engagement.
Yep. Negative engagement is still engagement.
Yeah, it is.
Yes.
But and that is my viewpoint on it. With a lot of these these safety tip videos that we do, we're always thinking, okay, are people going to be upset about this? Yes, but is it still worth it? Because even if people are giving us a bunch of negative comments, it's boosting the video and having more people see it and getting to the important part of the message, which at the end of the day, that's our goal. We want people to see it.
I mean, that's the message of Trolls, is even you taking the time to engage with it and say that we suck.
And let me just
appreciate the
and
boost.
let me just say that the sheriff's office, we create none of these laws.
Right.
Okay.
Law enforcement.
All right. I
100%.
am tasked with enforcing the laws.
Right.
I don't make the speed limit. I don't set, now there is some science that goes behind the timing of red lights and things like that.
Sure.
But the sheriff's office, again, we don't do that. I don't set the, where there's no parking signs or, I don't have anything to do with that. But again, there is a master plan that if everyone, will, the red lights are timed so that people who drive 55 will have adequate time to stop. If you're driving 80 and the light turns yellow, okay,
Go faster.
They weren't really, you may end up, you may be upset that, well, I couldn't stop in time. Well, you were doing 80 in all fairness, like you were already breaking the law, with a speed limit, and then, ran the red light. And so, but again, we're law enforcement.
Right.
So, you may be upset about some of the things we post that are required by law. You contact your state representative.
Absolutely.
Because they're the ones who pass this. Now, generally, there's a reason that they have that law. But, we don't create any of these laws. I don't put any signage up. I don't just make stuff up. But I do have to enforce the law, and people don't like that, and they somehow take it out on us. And it's like, I'm just the guy who enforces it.
That's why you should have been a firefighter.
Yes, I should have been.
I'm trying to think if there's any other major trolling comments that we've been getting on safety tips.
That's a whole other podcast, just that alone.
Probably. I was just trying to think if there was anything else in that vein.
Yeah, but people just there's of course the other video that was really popular was talking about putting your entire life story and everybody's names on the back of your car.
That's our most viewed video ever.
Video, which is when little Timmy plays baseball and you got little baseball and it says Timmy and his number, trying to make sure you're not putting that information out there. But yeah, we had people that are like, oh, thanks for the tip, I had to do whatever, and it's like,
oh yeah,
yep,
bros giving out the recipe.
Yeah. What's your mom? What is your mom making for dinner tonight? Is what I really want to ask them. Like, get a life, that's the whole point. And then people thinking we were actually outing an actual person. It's amazing we make it to work every day. I mean, that's a given as civilians, but I don't know. We're just barely scraping along. But we got to think about this stuff a little bit. There's some planning.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the point of these reels is just to get people thinking.
Right.
especially with that one, because some people were like, no one's going to put all of that together. And it's like, okay, but what if they just took one of those things and they know your kid goes to Northwest?
You don't even need all of it. But we put a bunch of stickers on the back. I mean, it looked like a NASCAR car with all the stickers back there, but that was the intent. That's
But we've all seen cars like that.
100%.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, people need to stop having kids at some point if they're going to run out of back window space in the sports. But well, Chuck, you've been a nonstop PSA. I think we've had so many crime tips that we've gotten out of this. We usually say, hey, is there anything you want the public to know? But that's been the last hour or so.
We've been feeding them subliminally the
whole time.
100%. That, another thing that I thought of when we were talking about lock your car doors. The other, what people say back to it is, well, they'll just break my windows anyways. And I love that one because I have seen so much footage, ring footage or whatever, security footage of a kid trying a handle. It doesn't work.
They move on.
And they move on.
It's a crime of opportunity.
And it may not be a kid, but
either way, like they move hit like 20 different places.
Yeah. They will break a window. And so my message is lock your doors and take anything of perceived value outside. Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's just a backpack. There's nothing in it.
Or it's just my laptop bag. There's no laptop in it.
Exactly. Right. So, the perception is that there could be something of value in that shopping bag, in that whatever container.
And they might break it if it's worth it.
And they
it has
could
to be worth it.
And they could break it in the hopes that, that Louis Vuitton bag doesn't have just trash and receipts in it, but, like you were dumb enough to leave your purse in it.
Right.
And so, lock your doors and take anything visible that is of perceived value.
Yeah. What about gun stickers on the back of cars? Like this car protected by Glock or something. Does that just let them know there's probably a gun in the glove box?
I know there was a lot of discourse about that with all the stickers, the video with the stickers on the back of the car. There was a bunch of people saying like, oh, well, I'm going to, say, I can't speak. I don't know anything about guns, but there's a sticker of that I own a gun in here.
Don't dial 911, dial 357.
Oh, okay.
Stuff like that.
Or instead of the stick figure family, they have the rifle and the pistol.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
that just looks like an appealing target for someone who wants
it's like, oh, you might have left it in there.
But thanks, Chuck, for coming on. You knew you'd never be able to say no because you literally work with us, so we would just badger you continuously.
And, I mean, he was requested in the comments.
He was requested. Yeah, he's a highly requested guest.
Well, I feel like my intro should have been like some little Spanish guitar music playing, and it'd been like, he's a 35-year deputy. He eats at a handful of restaurants and always gets the same entree. He's the world's most uninteresting man.
Well, now we could do that. We just stick that at the beginning, dub the music in.
Yeah,
this is what I'm talking about, people. This is what happens when we're planning safety tips.
Yeah,
100%.
Okay, now we're going to start the podcast. All right, so back to Marion County.
Yeah. We were going to start with ostriches, but I mean.
But thanks a lot, Chuck. We appreciate you coming on. We of course have a limited edition one-of-a-kind cup for you for participating. So we'll get that to you. But appreciate you coming on. Look forward to continuing to work on some great crime tip messaging. Now, this is Laura's part. If you have, questions, comments, any thoughts about upcoming episodes, people you want to hear from, you just want to tell us we suck like the people on social media do sometimes.
Or if you want to give us ideas for safety tips.
Oh, yeah. Safety tip ideas, too.
Would love to hear what you guys think you need to share.
Absolutely.
You guys are listeners.
Give Ashley ideas for the next reel.
Our listeners are in control, and you can exercise that control and influence over us if you simply
email us at lets56@pcsonet.com. That's LETS56@pcsonet.com.
We are also on the Instagram, 56 Podcast, spelled out, and you can connect with us there as well. Until next time, thanks for listening, everybody.